sharing your stories and playing your songs on Graham's JFDI Show.
Here we are in High G's again. It's cold and it's a little bit blustery. When I came up this evening, I could hear the wind sort of like blowing around the street, the village. It's cold, but we're all right. We're all right tonight. We don't need to be pretending to be in High G's. Look, we actually are. We're actually here. It's good to be back up here. I am excited to introduce you to a good friend of mine this evening. Somebody who I first met on, if I get it right, at West Drayton in 1989 on basic ASOP training course number 295. And if I'm wrong, there's somebody else in the green room that will most certainly correct me, but I think I'm absolutely spot on. So after being on the same training course together, we, unfortunately for him, he was posted to the same unit as me. We both went up to Buchan together, and we'll pick up with him and we'll take it from there. Because I'm not sure how long we spent there together, but there's probably a few tales to tell. What could I tell? Well, I'll tell you this. The other person in the green room tonight, in addition to this evening's guest, and I took a now fairly infamous trip into a Peterhead bar about a week after we'd all arrived at RAF Buchan, and the rest, as they say, is history. And I'm not going to say any more than that. I'm going to introduce you to this evening's guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please say hello, give a big, warm High G's and JFDI podcast welcome to Alan Didlick. Good evening.
You all right, fella?
How are you? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
Yes, I am fantastic. Thank you. Tell me.
I'm looking forward to this counselling session, actually, my friend. So I've been told for many years I need counselling. So okay. I want to use this hour to get a free counselling session from you so you can dig deep into my mind, my friend.
Mate, that's the floodgates opened now.
As long as you don't charge me for that hour.
Absolutely not. I was going to say the same thing. I was going to ask you whether you were more nervous about me asking you questions or Pat Penn being in the green room.
A bit of both, really. You can't help but feel a few butterflies, can you? I think everyone feels like that. So I've got the red wine next to me. So if it gets too much, then I'll just start boshing that.
There we go.
Speaking about wine, actually, and Pat Penn being on the green room, I met up with him just before lockdown, actually, for dinner, and he was on a contract in the northeast, and I was going home to the northeast. So I said, I'll meet you for dinner. And so he takes me to a nice gastro restaurant, thinking this is nice. And before we'd even got to dessert, Pat had drank 2 bottles of white wine to himself. Seriously, I was on the red wine, and the waiter comes over. He's like, I've never seen anything like that. And I said, well, you don't know Pat Penn. Get him another bottle of white wine right now. He's a legend. I don't know how he could even stand up after, having 2 bottles of wine. Anyway, that's enough.
How long ago was this? Before lockdown?
It was just before. He was on a 3-year contract in the northeast.
Right.
So I was visiting my parents, and I thought I'll pop in. But yeah, he could still stand, and he could still keep going. Even after.
I think if we asked him right now, he would say, I'm not the same man that I was before lockdown. I'm a changed man.
I think we'd all say that, wouldn't we, Pinky?
I certainly would. How much have you changed? How much have you changed since we first met?
Massively. But I've still got that crazy button inside me that if pressed, then I can be a loose cannon. I can kind of proper lose it if I want to.
Oh, those words, loose cannon.
Yeah. But on the whole, I can keep my shit together.
Yeah. Have you had times where like that button accidentally kind of goes off by itself, and it seems like you're not aware you've pushed it, but you may catch yourself some way down the line and go, "Hold on, I've gone off."
Yeah, pretty much for about 40 years. Is the truthful answer.
All right, I'm going to enjoy this tonight because I could dive straight in there, but we are here primarily to talk about music, and I know how passionate you are about music as well.
Massively,
we were talking just beforehand about the picture frames on the wall as well. So I've got a new band to listen to. We've spoken about it before. Some of the bands you've got Screamadelica there in the middle. And in actual fact, what people won't know, after a conversation that we'd had about what would it be about a year ago, I received not often that I received the gift of a book, and received Tenement by Bobby Gillespie as a gift. I'm extremely ashamed to say that I've not read it yet, but you know when you put something on the shelf and you go, I know when I'm going to read that. I know when the time will be right to read it.
Yeah.
And I know when the time will be right, because when I was writing, sorry, I've not mentioned my book for a while, and this is all about you tonight, but it's relevant. When I was writing the last bit of The Disappearing Scotsman, I think that's when we first kind of caught up. And I was reading the Primal Scream and Oasis, The Creation Stories by Alan McGee.
Oh, what a book. Amazing.
And it really helped kind of get into that mindset of what it would be like to behave if you were in a rock and roll band.
Well, I only sent you that book because, you wrote one, and I just thought, well, that's a lot harder than me paying £10 on Amazon to get that book to you. So well, that's the least I could do. You haven't written one, so.
Well, I thank you very much indeed for it. And when it will be read, and I can tell you, so the beginning of next year, I start that. I've all kind of mapped out that creative process of starting the sequel. So I'll be reading it early next week to get back into that sort of frame of mind.
Yeah, it's a good read.
So thank you. Anyway, should we talk about your tunes and kick off?
Yes.
With your first one. So you've got 4.
5.
Have you got another one?
I thought I sent 5.
Did you? I only got. Oh well, it's all right. You can just tell me what the other one is, that if I maybe missed it.
Yeah, that's all right. Have you got the right tunes actually?
I hope so.
The first one's Fleetwood Mac.
Yes, Songbird.
That's a good start, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the story with this?
So, well, I've just gone in chronological order. So I need to have a little system. So I've gone 70s, 80s, 90s, sort of millennium.
Yeah.
And Fleetwood Mac, I think, was when I was starting to get conscious of music. I think I was around about 4 when it was released. The album Rumours by Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably started listening to that when I was 6, 7. And my auntie and uncle played it. And I just realized then how good music could be. And it's still in my top 3 all-time greatest albums ever. Fleetwood Mac, Rumours. I know they're not the trendiest band in the world, but there's a song on there called Songbird. I like songs. I like birds. Put them together. What's not to like, really. I think I've chosen this song because I also got married to it in 2012. So it's my first introduction to music. And then even 30, 40 years later, when I'm getting married, that was a song that I put on, actually. And I remember turning around to my auntie and uncle going, you got me into this, and I'll never forget it. But yeah, the wedding was an amazing day, but we had the cheapest wedding in the world. I mean, we couldn't spend any less. And, I'll put that down to getting some advice off Stu McCann's wife, Sam, who is an accountant, so she knows how to handle money. And, she needs to be married to Stu. Yeah, she said, it's really expensive getting married just for one day. But their wedding was amazing, by the way. Apart from Skip did a presentation, actually. I've never seen it at a wedding since. He did a PowerPoint presentation. It was actually like being in a board meeting. He had like pie charts, flow charts, graphs, and Skip is a comedy genius. But anyway, at the wedding, he did that for Stu. And I remember Sam saying it's a lot of money to spend. And over the years, people were saying to me, it just costs so much money to get married. And when it came to it, I just went completely the opposite way. And I remember sitting on the beach listening to Songbird with my wife. And I said, shall we get married? And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And we were on Brighton seafront. And I remember looking behind me saying, would you rather have a flat on the seafront or would you rather spend loads of money getting married? And she said, I'd rather have a flat on the seafront.
Yeah.
So there and then we just walked up and down the seafront, found a venue, booked it, cheap as chips. We just texted all our friends and said, we're getting married in 3 months. If you can make it, great. If you can't, then don't worry about it. So we had the cheapest wedding ever. Yeah, so that's why it's Songbird.
Fantastic. I love that. And did you get the seafront pad?
Yeah, we did. And we had a venue on the seafront, but the food was absolutely shocking. But the wedding was still a great day because everyone was pissed anyway. So.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just brings back good memories of an amazing album and just getting married. Yeah.
So when you first heard it, what would you say was going on in your life when you first heard it?
I think we were en route to a cheap caravan holiday.
Right. Okay.
I'm from Middlesbrough. If you come from Middlesbrough, like Billy and Bladesy said, you're not going to have much money. So we weren't going anywhere flash, but I remember we were going on a road trip. So that's my kind of first memory of it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. What was life like back then, apart from having no money?
Amazing, because you just played sports. It was all tennis, football, getting up to mischief. But there was no opportunities in Middlesbrough. So I really didn't want to work in a sausage factory. And that's why I joined the Air Force, actually. And I think Middlesbrough at the moment in Cleveland is known as the number one most dangerous place in the country for crime at the moment, per head.
Is it?
Yeah, it's number one for crime per head per people.
Oh,
so
we were there last weekend.
What were you doing there?
Well, that's where Karen's folks are from. Well, they're from Skelton, so it's a little bit outside, but I mean, it's still.
Is that the posh area, Pinky?
I would not say it's posh. I don't know. You need to ask my wife. I don't think my sister-in-law and brother-in-law or my mother-in-law would say it's posh either. Like, I don't know. Let's see.
There's nice parts. There's nice parts.
Yeah, I mean, it's not anywhere. It's nowhere near like South Bank, mate. I mean, and I know that.
South Bank.
Is that not? Is South Bank not? Is it South Bank or North Bank?
Oh, South Bank. There's a lot of dodgy area. Brambles Farm, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. There, yes. Well, yeah, We were down visiting Karen's mum and sister.
Right.
So yeah, you've got a few guests. You've got a few people asking after you, mate. I don't know if you can see the comments.
I can't see any comments. No.
All right, I'll read them out to you. Sam McCann says hi, as does Julie Gunn.
Sam. Hello, Julie.
And Stu McCann, yes, he said you're a cheeky git. Said it was a lovely day. Billy's watching as well, and said yeah, Billy said that she would love to work in a sausage factory. I'll bet you would, Billy. And she said she lived in South Bank as well. I thought that's where you were from, Billy Wilson. There you go.
That's the posh part.
No. So and Vicky Franklin is watching as well. Nice parts to everywhere. The people make the places. Yes, they do indeed. Very good point, Vicky.
I remember Vicky Franklin. Yeah. She was our boss, wasn't she?
She was. Yeah.
Yeah. When I watched her podcast, I felt so guilty of how bad we were so uncontrollable. And then when what she went through, and then she had to deal with us dickheads who were like 16, 17. I don't know how she did it really. So hats off to her. Respect, because I think at one point I also had the hots for her actually. She might not know it. I felt as though she could dominate me, not just professionally, but personally. Can I say that on this?
You just did. I think Vicky might be blushing.
So am I.
What during your how long did you spend in the RAF in the end then?
Not that long actually. Well, I joined at 16. I arrived at RF Bucking at 16.
Yeah. And
I left RF Bucking by the time, within 16, 17 months. And I left in 95. So, yeah. I didn't stay in too long. I didn't even get to 5.5 years, I don't think.
Wow. So what was they say 16, 17 months as long as you spent at Bucking. What are your most vivid memories of that time?
What, at Bucking?
Yeah. Yeah,
I remember Davy Kinnaird being a comedy genius. He was one of the first Scottish people I met, and I was thinking, wow, this guy's funny. So yeah, I remember that. I've got lots of like Malcolm Clark for some reason. I remember him bouncing around piss one day with a brown paper bag on his head. Like the American bags you get in the superstores, and he'd taken the eyes out of it. And he was walking around Peterhead or something, just bouncing off the walls. And I think he ended up falling in a skip. So I remember him. I just remember all the craziness, really. I don't remember what I was eating there for sure. But obviously us getting arrested before we'd even arrived almost. We were only there a few weeks. That sort of sticks in my mind. But yeah, I was thinking, how did this happen? Because I didn't even smoke. I didn't even smoke cigarettes, and I'm getting busted for smoking dope within 2 weeks. So I'm like, how did this happen? I just remember being interviewed then, and they kept saying, do you want to smoke? Do you want a cigarette? The policeman. And I was like, no, I don't smoke. And every 20 minutes they're asking me if I want a cigarette. I'm like, no. And it just started irritating me. And I think in the end they realized that I just didn't smoke. So I managed to get away with it, I would say. Well, there was two guys that were the kind of fall guys for it. But yeah, I think we know who they are. I remember you crashing your car, Pinky, at 60 mile an hour into the field.
Oh, you remember that?
Yeah. But now I know Gary Homewood sold you that car.
Yeah.
I should imagine we had no brakes. I mean, he could have killed us. So.
I was sold on the fact it had 16.5-inch low profile tires. I'll never forget him. Yeah, I'll never forget him selling me that car.
Well, you passed the test?
No, I hadn't passed my test when that happened. No.
You could tell. I mean, it was shocking.
Oh, of course, because of course you were in the car with me.
Yeah, I was fighting for my breath. I couldn't breathe.
Were you in the back seat?
I was in the back seat. Yeah.
What do you remember about that? Do you remember anything about it?
I just thought different rules apply in Scotland. Well, maybe you don't need to pass your test here, because that's all I remember. I think you abandoned the car, didn't you? We just left it.
Yeah. What do you remember about the kind of lead up to being in the field? Do you remember anything about that?
Well, I just remember a T-junction thinking, when are you going to stop? And if I'd known Gary Homewood had sold you that car, I just wouldn't have got in it.
So going back to that sort of whole police interview thing, do you think any of that experience stayed with you, or had any kind of influence on how you were in the Air Force moving forward after that?
Well, I think there's one thing that sticks in my mind is moving forward from then on, I would always get a lawyer. Anything happens, get a lawyer, because we were so naive. I'd only just left school. I mean, I was still 16 when I was there. I think I was still 16 when I was being interviewed.
Yeah.
So I did not have a clue. I think that stuck in my mind. But once we got away with it, I think that the thing that sticks in my mind is actually when I was with Stu and Pat, actually, that where I really thought we were going to get sent down. And it's probably the one thing that, you know, I felt a bit of fear. I thought, if we get caught here, we're done. And we got back one night from Peterhead and we were walking past the officers' mess. And we walked into the officers' mess. This was about midnight. And I know what you're thinking. We're officer material. That's if there was 3 guys that should have been officers, it was me, Pat, I would say, and Stu McCann. So we strolled in there, pissed up, and we were faced with this eagle on a chair. It was on a table actually, and it looked so expensive. I've never seen an ornament so amazing. It was a stunning piece of furniture. And Pat or Stu turned around and said, "Imagine we knocked that over. Imagine someone hit that." And that day I'd watched Eric Cantona do that kung fu kick. You know, when he runs into the crowd at Crystal Palace? And that was fresh in my mind. So I just done this kung fu kick, took this eagle out, and the smash. I've never heard a smash in all my life. And we just ran for it. We were tripping over tables, chairs, and we got back to the block absolutely terrified. And Pat said the next day all the officers got pulled in. They were interrogated. They were interviewed. They got a real hard time. So that always sticks in my mind as a crazy night that we managed to get away with. But like Davy Kinnaird said, if you're going to do something, don't get caught.
Good grief. And was that it? Was it their complete silence after that on your part? Nothing came of it?
Well, apart from a few hours later, it was a Scottish person. I don't know whether it was you or Paddy Neal, knocked on the door, my door, and said, "It's the RF police." And I absolutely shit my pants. So I thought I was going down. I can't remember who it was, but that was the moment. You know, I've got a heart condition now, actually, and it probably stems from whoever. They were Scottish and they were winding me up, saying it's the RF police. So I opened the door, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been Paddy Neal or you. I can't remember.
Stu McCann reckons it was Pat Malloy.
Pat Malloy? Oh, yeah, I remember Pat Malloy. Yeah, we got in a few scrapes together, I would say, me and Pat Malloy. Yeah. You two were fellow D-Watch, weren't you? Pat was from Port Glasgow, right, as I recall? Yeah, my memory of Pat Malloy is when we got cornered on Peterhead Beach by about 6 Peterhegians. And they were going to just beat the shit out of us. And fortunately, we had Nigel Bonswell with us. And I remember him saying, "Get on your knees." And he said, when they get within 10 yards, pick the stones up, put it in the faces, steam in, and then just run off. And that was my last memory of Pat Malloy. We got into a right tear up on the beach. And we're good runners, though, so we got away. Yeah, it was nuts. I just remember all the nuts stuff because that creates emotion, doesn't it? You always remember things that are quite emotional. So yeah,
absolutely.
Great time.
So some crazy times up.
Yeah.
So let's skip back because your next song is from the 80s. My daughter would tell me I should know what album, what year, and when this was released because I've created a Prince, 15-year-old Prince fan that knows everything. So I've done my job there. But your next song is Prince 99.
Yeah. I know you're a fan as well, my friend. But you know, I think this was the first record I think I ever bought in 1982. And Prince, just no pun intended, just went on a purple patch in that decade. I think he released 7 albums. And at least 3 or 4 of them were the great, you know, they're in the top 10 of greatest albums ever made, like Purple Rain, Sign of the Times. I think you're a fan of, Pinky.
Absolutely. So, that's my favorite album. That's my favorite.
Yeah, classic. Yeah. I've chosen him because he was absolutely my hero. He played every musical instrument, wrote every song, produced it, and I don't think anyone could touch him. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think we've chosen the right guy, Pinky, because a lot of people were into Michael Jackson, but he's been proved to be a right paedophile, allegedly. So yeah, it's Prince was the man for me. He was just incredible.
He was. Yeah, I could not agree more. Could not agree more. Do you
What's
think?
your favorite song? What's your favorite?
What's
Prince
my?
song? What's your favorite Prince song?
Oh my lord! Now that you're putting me on the spot. Hey, I asked the questions. So I'll just buy myself a little bit of time. For a long time, it used to be Raspberry Beret, because I kind of quite like but that album as well. I've got a real kind of thing, and I always found myself going back to Around the World in a Day. I think I like the whole psychedelic kind of nature of it as well, and songs like Paisley Park, The Ladder. On that album, that there's something kind of cool about it. It's not my favorite, but there's something kind of that I think it was had a real feel to it. But now I don't know if I could put my finger on, like you said, he was so talented and had so many quality tunes. I don't know if I could put my finger in there and say one favorite song. I don't know. Something off Sign of the Times. I don't know. Anastasia off Love Sexy. That's another corking tune.
Amazing.
Is that your favorite Prince song as well?
I wouldn't know. There's just too many to choose, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, Purple Rain album, Love Sexy, Sign of the Times. You just can't beat them. But you were not a fan of the 80s, were you, Pinky? Is that right?
No. No. I didn't.
What were you not a fan of the 80s with?
I didn't really like. I liked Prince. But okay, let me just. I'll just say this, and then you'll understand. The first single I ever bought was Green Door by Shakin' Stevens, and I was into Shaky. Yeah, that says it all, right?
You have got a bit of a shaky look.
So I think Shakin' Stevens was my first musical love, if you will, and then I kind of moved on to Prince. But it was, it was a cassette somebody gave me that had, I think it was 1999. Yeah. I think it might have been the cassette. It had like 17 Days on a B-side. But that was about all. That was the only thing that I really would say that I liked in the 80s was Prince. I thought everything else was dog shit.
Well, let me name some bands. There was so much variety, I thought. In the 80s.
Go on.
And I know Hammy was talking about how great the 80s were when he was on.
Yeah.
You had bands like ZZ Top.
Yeah.
Finding Cannibals.
Oh, yeah.
You had In Excess.
Yeah, okay.
The Human League.
Yeah.
You had Depeche Mode.
Oh.
You had New Order coming in.
Yeah.
You had U2 releasing classic albums. I mean, I could go on all day, mate. It was such good variety. It doesn't matter what you were into in the 80s. There was good stuff about it.
Do you know what I think it was? I think it was the emergence, if you will, of the whole. What did you call it? That kind of not glam. That was the 70s, but that modern kind of like modern romantic sort of phase. All of that fluffy stuff, and I know Prince did a little bit of that with his shirt and stuff. But the British version of it,
Well, Adam and the Ants, you mean?
And then there was a load of other stuff as well, like your Spandau Ballets and your Duran
Duran and all them. They were terrible.
Yes, thank you.
There was a lot of crap about it. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah. Yes, there was indeed. Yeah, but do you know what? Karen did the same. Karen did the same a few years ago, where she challenged me on a whole load of 80s bands, and I had to concede because some of them were like Scottish ones as well. So she was saying like Deacon Blue, for example. I kind of quite like them. Yeah, there was a Scottish band called Love and Money. They were quite good as well. Hipsway, do you remember them?
Not so much, but you mentioned Scottish bands there. There was one of my favourite songs in the 80s was a Scottish band. It was my favourite 12-inch ever. Do you know who this is, Pinky? I don't need no ministration, no bad determination. I've had enough of
you
and your super bad crew. Who's that?
Hue and Cry, Labour of Love.
God, you are a superstar DJ. Well done, mate.
Yes, going to mistake my labour. Oh, that's actually perhaps was a turning point for me, because when I heard that, I was at friends of my mum and dad's, and their son, who was like about 2 or 3 years older than me, played that, and I was like, actually, I really do like that.
Great.
They were good. They were good. Yeah.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone the other day who got me into the 1975, and he's got a tattoo on him, and he's like, yeah, this is the 1975. And I was thinking, wow, you've got a tattoo of a band. I was thinking, if I followed that, I'd probably have Hue and Cry on my arsehole. I was thinking, you're going to regret that, my friend. Getting tattoos of your favourite band, not a good thing.
Do you have any tattoos?
Absolutely zero.
None. If you did, and it wasn't Hue and Cry on your arsehole, what would it be?
I think it would be a dolphin on your arm, like Stu McCann. Sorry, Stu. Sorry.
You're naughty.
I've never seen the point in going through the pain, really, and paying money for it.
What about you mentioned regrets there as well? What about regrets? Do you have a few?
Regrets?
Wow. Or none?
No, I think you've always got regrets, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just trying to think of. Yeah, I've had a few. I don't know whether I can speak about them actually. Yeah. Well, as you know, I was a little bit of a live wire. So, when you're a bit of a live wire, you get into a few scrapes, don't you?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I regret. But we might come back to that when we speak about the tunes, actually.
Right. Okay.
But I think my biggest regret, on a serious note, is actually in '99 when I was going on holiday with Tom Bloxham, and I booked to go. Tom Bloxham. Yeah. We were booked to go away to Thailand together with a couple of his mates, and I just got too busy with work. So I remember ringing him saying, "Look, I can't make it." I said, "I'm just going to have to lose the money." And I remember him just being gutted about it. And then I never heard from him again. So I think that's one of my biggest regrets, because getting the phone call off Stu telling me he passed away. And I remember his commanding officer saying, "I wish you'd gone there because you might have been able to do something about it." I think that really sticks in my mind as a major regret. But we've all got them, but that's definitely one that sort of sits deep.
Right. Okay.
Because he's an amazing guy.
I had no idea. That must. I
still remember where I was stood when Stu called me, Scouse. When he called me, I still remember exactly where I was at the desk. Yeah, when he kind of told me. So yeah, that was pretty devastating.
What are your most kind of vivid, happy memories of Tom?
I think Tom was just, his laughter was amazing. And I think I remember him taking me to a jungle club, and I was never in a jungle ever. And I think it was called the Labyrinth, and I think Stu might have been with us. And it was a place you couldn't even get out of. We were crawling around on our knees, and the music was playing, and he was loving it. And I was like, this is absolutely horrific. But we managed to get out. And my memory of Tom is just his laugh, his smile, and just going out with him and having a good time. And he didn't care where you were from, who you were. He treated everyone the same. Didn't matter where you were in life, what rank, whatever. He sort of treated you the same.
Right.
Charming.
Yeah, gone. And another very, very sad and unfortunately, there are a number of people in exactly the same. We've lost two young, and we've discussed a few with guests on here. And now we're not getting any younger, any of us. But I say, and this is why I ask you what your happy memories are of them, because we always. I don't have a glass with me. We raise a toast to absent friends. We can do that anyway. I think it's.
Well, I've got a glass of wine. So.
Yeah, I think, and anybody watching, if you've got a glass as well, as long as we continue to talk and to share our memories of those that we've lost, then they're always alive in here. And that's what counts. They'll never die that way. So we just need to keep telling these stories. It's kind of why I started doing this. So, yeah, raise your glasses to Tom and to all of those other faded responses, those gone too soon, to absent friends.
Definitely. Well, speaking about people passing, I got a call from my mother yesterday, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to do this podcast, actually, thinking, because, when your mum rings nowadays, we're getting to the age now, aren't we, where you're thinking someone's got gout, someone's had a stroke, someone's had a heart attack. It's normally bad news from your mum, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And then she rings me up yesterday at 6:00. And she went, I don't want you to panic. She went, but I've got a brain tumor and I've had it for 10 months. And I was like, really? I said, how am I just finding out about it now? And she didn't even know she had it. The doctor, the way he described it, he didn't explain that it was a brain tumor. So she's got the all clear, but she turned around and she said, look, I've got the all clear. The doctor told me 2 days ago that it's benign. I've got no problems. It hasn't changed in size. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me 2 days ago? And you know what she replied? She said, I was watching Ant and Dec on I'm a Celebrity and didn't have time to call me. Can you believe it? I'm like, what? You couldn't call your sons to talk about a brain tumor? You were watching Ant and Dec.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. That's just what my parents are like, though. My father, he's had 3 heart attacks, 2 strokes. And he doesn't call me until he's out of hospital. So it's a different generation, isn't it? So.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
But it's all good because, as soon as she told me she was fine, I felt like I was the lucky one because a lot of people get the other side of the call. So I was absolutely delighted when she said everything was fine. So.
Yeah, well, it is. It's a count your blessings, isn't it? I think there's so many of our friends that have lost their one or both their parents as well. So indeed, count our blessings.
Absolutely.
So I'll give you a choice now. Should we? Yeah. Do you want to move on to your next song, or do you want to go back to where we kind of picked up within your military career? Because I want to ask you about what's happened. There's a big gap between when you left and now, and we'll come on to that. But there's a little bit that you've not mentioned after you left Buchan, between then and when you left. Whereabouts was that? What were the kind of highlights there, and ultimately, what kind of led to you coming out of the Air Force?
Yeah, there's quite a few questions. And I suppose within 16 months, I was sent down to Stanmore Park, Bentley Priory. I don't know whether you've ever been there. Yeah, that's in London. Yeah. So I was nervous going down there. 18. I was thinking I don't know anyone, but actually, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. I felt so fortunate to get it because all of the Scopies down there were a little bit older. They were a little bit more sensible. They were, quite professional. So I couldn't walk in there and be a total lunatic at the age of 18. So they really rubbed off on me, and I started doing well, getting good assessments. Instead of getting 6s, getting 9, 10s, that sort of stuff. So it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. And it was almost like being a civilian anyway down there, because there were half civvies, half military. And it was 9 till 4, whatever it was, every Wednesday afternoon off. So it was easy street. And I was learning transferable skills.
Yeah.
So on a professional level, I was totally on it. But on a personal level, I was proper losing it in London, like really losing it. It was because I was young, loads of energy, I could manage it.
Right.
So, I was quite fortunate to get there because they turned around and said, if you can find a job within 2 weeks, you can leave. They were just trying to get rid of people at that point. So I managed to find a job in IT. 5 of my mates also found jobs in IT in different areas. So we all left at the same time. So it couldn't, if I could have wrote the script for how I was going to leave, that would have been it, because it was just an easy transition. Didn't have time to think about it. Got a job quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I was out of there. So yeah.
So you're one of the lucky ones that kind of it was fairly seamless. All the kind of pieces of the puzzle fit into place quite quickly, and it was smooth.
Yes, I'd felt like I'd left anyway by the time I had, because when you walk out the gate of Stanmore Park, you're in London.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. So you already feel part of life. You're already blended in.
Yeah.
So I was just really, really lucky, I felt anyway.
Yeah.
And it was a good stage because it was so small.
Yeah.
So everyone got to know each other.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that so sounds professionally that transition was great, and the Bentley Priory team that had kind of rubbed off on you, you'd kind of taken those skills, moved into IT, all hunky-dory. Professionally, you mentioned personally at that age you were at, you were just losing it in London. What did that look like?
Well, but I would describe it as having the time of your life. I was just getting into sort of dance music. There was great records out there. Track was Gat Decor, Passion. That I chose. Yeki Yeki had come out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeki Yeki had come out. Alison Limerick, Where Love Lives, and we'd kind of discovered club culture, and I felt like I went from black and white to color.
Right.
And it was just out every Friday, Saturday night time. And everyone just loved each other in those clubs. There was no fighting, no aggressiveness. Everyone was from different backgrounds, different cultures, black, white, whatever. Didn't matter what you were. And everyone just loved each other. So I approached it like that record, passion. I approached my work with passion, and I approached club culture with passion. But so much so that it nearly killed me. And I think the main memory I have is being out on New Year's Eve with Pat Penn, funnily enough, a few of the guys from like the military. And my main memory is 1 minute I'm there in the club, and next minute paramedics are taking me to hospital. And that was like New Year's Eve. And I remember waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning with patches all over me. I don't think I should be telling you this, but this is how crazy it kind of got. And I remember waking up with looking at my blood pressure, looking at my pulse, looking at all my vitals. And then I realized it was New Year's Eve, and I just pulled all the wires off, went back to the club. I don't know how I found it, but there was no Google Maps. It was Alexandra Palace, never been there in my life. I remember walking in, the bouncers let me in. I don't know how I managed to talk my way in. And then Pat Penn thought he'd seen a ghost. And all my mates from the Air Force and outside of the Air Force were touching me on the arm going, "Is that you, Dids?" And I was like, yeah, they thought I was hallucinating. And then another guy walked over that was in our group that evening, and he just shook my hand and he said, "That's the most rock and roll thing I've ever seen." So it kind of just got out of control,
Right. Okay.
I still went.
What had happened? What had led you to be taken to hospital?
Well, I can resist everything but temptation, Pinky. And I was young.
Yeah.
I'd found something that was totally different. I just went for it.
Right.
And I was flying too close to the sun. Let's just say that.
Icarus.
And the problem with that, you get burned.
Yeah, it tends to happen. Yeah, it tends to happen. So, what was that like? Was that like a kind of pivotal moment? Did anything change after that? was there any sort of realization or epiphany at that point, or was there something else? Did you carry on? Did things change after that, or how did that impact you then moving forward from that New Year's Eve?
Well, I moved into recruitment at that point, IT recruitment. So I'd worked as an IT analyst for a few years, realized that I wasn't enjoying that. When I left the Air Force, I was working for the Abbey National as an IT analyst, and I just felt it was so boring. I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest. So I realized I couldn't do that any longer. So I moved into IT recruitment, specializing in SAT, what Pat Ben does actually. And that was probably even crazier, if I'm being honest. It's known as rock and roll recruitment. So in the early days, it was in its infancy. There was no rules or regulations, and it was very much like being a trader. It was like you were either minted or you weren't earning anything. So it was a high risk game.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of young people in the game. Your boss was just the same age. So it kind of went to even a bigger level. But we all worked hard. It didn't stop us working hard. It didn't stop us making money. It didn't stop us turning up.
Yeah.
We just played hard and worked hard. That was the way it was. But yeah.
And did anything? So what changed then? What at what point on this path of escalation of things? Because I'm guessing as you're working harder as well, and the kind of moves, the promotions, etc. With this kind of comes more money as well. So the exploits may get crazier and crazier as and you've got more money to do more crazy stuff as well. So I mean, at some point, what we do know is that what goes up must come down. So what kind of what caused was there an even bigger down than waking up in hospital and pulling wires off yourself?
Well, I remember thinking, I can't handle this money. I couldn't handle the money. I really just couldn't. I've come from a background with no money. Yeah. And to be getting that at an early age, I just couldn't handle it. So I just done something really drastic, and I changed career where I was earning no money whatsoever. I went from a 6-figure salary to earning £16,000 a year.
Right. Okay. And what move was that? Was that from the IT analyst to the recruitment?
No, this was even crazier. I moved away from recruitment and started working as a trainee paramedic.
Ah, right. Okay.
So I just said, if I cut off all that money, then I can't do any crazy stuff.
Right.
So I was walking to work one day and someone got knocked over by a van. And I called the ambulance service and they arrived, and I thought, oh, that looks a really good job. And the next day they were advertising in the Metro newspaper for the London ambulance service. So I applied, and then unbelievably I got in. So all the craziness had to stop because I had to train for 5 months. And, you can't be turning up battered if you're saving lives.
Yeah.
So I had a complete change. And I remember joining and they were like, why would you want to do it? And even my boss was going, I can't believe you're going to go and do this. You're going to be working nights. You're going to be on a really low wage. I mean, you could barely afford to live in London, 16 grand a year.
Yeah.
So it was quite a change.
Crikey. So that was 5 months until you qualified. How long did you stay in that job then?
Not particularly that long, 2 years.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, it just wasn't really for me. The good news is I met my wife. She was a paramedic at the time. But one of my first jobs was, and I was quite lucky, I had a senior person on with me, was actually a child being born, or baby being born prematurely and passing away. So that was my introduction to the ambulance service, and I just couldn't handle it.
Oh man,
what they do is absolutely incredible, and what they get paid is peanuts. So I was always thinking about moving on anyway, just because the first week was so horrific.
Yeah.
So seeing something like that, you don't really kind of get over.
And
But
Has that kind of had an impact, like a lasting impact on you? Do you think?
well, if we go back to Prince 1999, the world's got a bomb. We could all die any day. And what you see is people passing away. They're there 1 minute, they're gone the next. And I think you realise that you've got to appreciate everything you have right here, right now. You've got to live in the moment, and everything you experience, you're very fortunate to have it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then I did see things on a lighter note where people passed away, and I was thinking, well, that wouldn't be too bad a way of dying. I did walk in on one person that passed away on the toilet, and there was a pornographic magazine on the floor. So I thought, well, that's not a bad way to go, is it? Yeah.
Oh, somebody living out their Elvis death fantasy. That's a bit
really bloated. Too many burgers.
Oh, crikey! So it was obvious then that the reason that you took that career path was ultimately destiny calling and you meeting your good lady wife.
Yeah. It's I remember asking her on a date, and she didn't realise it was a date actually. So I took her to a nice restaurant.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, she thought I was just there to just have a chat.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I want to see you. So, yeah, that was the start of I suppose, us getting together, getting married, and me leaving the Air Force, actually. And she also, sorry, not leaving the Air Force, leaving the ambulance service.
Yeah.
And my wife also left it, actually, because she'd seen enough after 10 years.
Right, okay.
She was one of the first on the buses at the London bombings. And, when you see that sort of stuff, and you just have to go straight on another job straight away. So you don't get time to even process it. It's like you got to go on another job. Away you go. So, yeah, but every cloud has a silver lining. And I met my wife. Yeah.
And been together for how long now?
Since 2005, 6, I think.
Oh, lovely.
5, 6. So yeah, I was only going to do it once, so I didn't want to rush into it. We didn't get married till 2012.
Right.
But yeah, she's a little bit older, only a few years, but I've always liked the older woman.
I think we established that at the beginning of the call. Yeah, right at the beginning of the show, we established that. Okay, so here's one that through the Air Force and the ambulance service and IT, all of that. What would you say that all of that taught you? What were the key lessons that you took out of each phase? Would you say?
Yeah. What have I learned? Well, there's been lots of different phases.
Let's go military. What did the military teach you other than always get a lawyer if you're arrested?
I think what that taught me was just be on time. If you turn up, just get the job done, regardless of how you feel. Just get there and do a good job. I think that's what that taught me.
Yeah. And then moving into the period of the pre-ambulance time in IT.
I think that taught me that I was not cut out for IT. But it was quite boring. I just couldn't see myself doing that. So I kind of learned that wasn't for me. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned about the ambulance service as well, about, I think, quite very well put, about just being grateful for for what we've got and for those around us, because you just you just don't know when it can all be taken away from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So through that period of time, right up until like kind of leaving the ambulance service,
yeah,
you mentioned about the reduction in money, and kind of like from being brought up with nothing to kind of all of a sudden having money, and then you'd kind of decided, I'm going to go and do this, which meant you had no money again. fair old sacrifice to make, which, you know, obviously taught lessons. But can you think of another time throughout your life where you've you've really kind of had to make sacrifices to kind of get where, you know, where you wanted to go? You know, that you kind of had a clearer path of where you wanted to go, but you knew that sacrifice had to be made. Is there any other occasion that you can think of?
I don't think I've had to make that many sacrifices, actually. I think taking a massive pay cut is a huge one. But it's all helped me to become the person I am. So I've always enjoyed pretty much what I've done apart from working in IT. So the Air Force was amazing. Recruitment was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I did get a little bit crazy towards the end, but then I was very successful at it. So it's, you know, I haven't really had any hardship, I would say, apart from when I joined the ambulance service.
Right.
There's my honest answer.
So what brought you to where you are right now? How did you find your way there? And where is that exactly for people that don't?
Weirdly enough, I moved back into recruitment, but not as a salesperson, which is where the money is really. So my previous company that I'd worked for, they wanted me to take over the training team. So I'm now responsible for training and development. So I've been doing that for the past 14 years. So I manage a team responsible for training, coaching. So I'm still in recruitment, but I'm not with the crazy part of recruitment. Okay. I'm not there. So, you know, you've got to be sensible. You know, it's like if you're training a coach and you have to turn up and be pumped, you can't just turn up and say that I've had a night out. I can't perform today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how I got there. My previous boss.
Energy's important, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So that's how I got there. Yeah. And I really enjoy it. So it's good.
Well, you must enjoy it if you've spent 14 years there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 14 years. What's your favorite part about the job that you do now?
I would say that I get an amazing work-life balance, and if it's one thing I've been looking for all my life, it's a work-life balance. For the first 20 years, I worked stupidly hard, played hard, but I always wanted work-life balance, and that has given me happiness. So if it's given me anything, that's what it's given me.
Yeah. What does that look like for Alan Didlick now? What does work-life balance look like?
Well, it means not having to go into the office every day, only having to go into London once a week, having time to do sports, well, not sports, but exercise, having time to listen to music, play the piano, whatever it is, whatever I want to do, I have time for it and I feel refreshed. You know, gone are the days where I want to try and kill myself, working myself to the bone. So I've been very fortunate that the company have given me autonomy and given me a work-life balance. So it's that's what I've always wanted in life. Yeah. So.
Right. You just said there quite flippantly, gone from wanting to kill yourself. At what point in the journey did that happen?
Say that again.
You just kind of quite blasé, like said, you went from wanting to kill yourself to where you are now. At what point in the journey?
Not wanting to kill, but working as though you're going to kill yourself.
Okay.
Working. Yeah. So I didn't mean
more running yourself around.
Yeah.
Right.
So I meant just working yourself to the bone. Because... Right.
And did that, so and then in terms of like how much you worked, what how bad did things get from a health perspective then? You know, what were you talking, how many hours were you talking and working, and you know, at what point was that?
Well, I don't know if you're aware, but I have had a heart condition, so it got to the point just before lockdown where I needed 3 stents put in my heart, or I needed a triple heart bypass or 3 stents. So I was always conscious growing up. My father had a heart attack at 44. I don't know any of my granddads. They all died of heart attacks really early. So the lifestyle I lived and the genes that I had, I was always conscious something might happen. And the day before lockdown, I was having a heart procedure. So I had 3 stents put in and I was very close to dying. So that was literally the first day of lockdown. I was on the operating table.
Yeah. How did something happen? How did that kind of manifest itself physically? You obviously felt something happen. What happened?
Yeah, this might help some people actually, because it was lucky I worked in the ambulance service that I spotted it. Because, you know, when I walked to work, I'd have a 45-minute walk with a backpack on. And I noticed as soon as I started walking, I could feel a bit of pressure on my chest. And it was like the brakes were coming on my chest. And I knew something wasn't right, because when I sat down on the train, the pain would go within seconds. So I remember that happening for a few days. And I remember asking someone at work if they knew CPR. I said, because I feel like something's not right. So I went to the hospital at the weekend, and there was no heart surgeons there. So I got a call on the Tuesday. I think it was just before lockdown, the day we went into lockdown, and it was the heart surgeon. And she said, you need to stop walking, because I was walking at the time. I was walking really quick with a backpack on. I described what I had. I described what had happened to my dad. And she said, you've got heart disease. You need to be here 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then I was on the operating table having 3 stents put in. And there was only 3 of us in the hospital because of lockdown. So you had to be really dying to be in there.
Wow.
So,
yeah. I'm guessing that kind of, that must have been a bit of a shock to the system, kind of like physically, but how did you wrap your head around that? Because I'm guessing things had to change. Did you have to change anything about your lifestyle after that then?
Well, I walked in at the hospital all fresh-faced. And the nurse was like, this guy's taking the piss. The way she looked at me, she went, nothing's wrong with this guy. And then suddenly they realized it was serious. The only thing I would say I changed, I used to go out every 6 months, twice a year. And I'd lose it, and I just can't do that anymore. So it's not even an option.
Right.
So for the past 15 years, you know, I'd always just go out every now and then, I would say. But now it got to a point where it was once every 6 months, and that can't even happen now. Not to the level that I would go to. So that's the only thing that changed, because I live well. I've got good work-life balance. I have 2 glasses of wine a week. So I do exercise. So the only thing that changed is I didn't go and lose it.
Yeah.
6 months. In fact, Paolo Nutini's got a song out at the moment called Lose It. He played it on Jules Holland. Absolutely amazing. And it just reminded me of when I could just lose it. In fact, they used to call me Dynamite Dids, because every 6 months I'd just proper lose it. But I lived like a monk sort of for 6 months.
Yeah.
So I'll be dedicated to my job, everything. And when I did go out for that weekend, I'd take the week off afterwards. So when I lost it, I would take the week off. So but I can't even do that now. So.
Just to properly recover, crikey. So you're a great. I'm right in saying we should probably go on to your last song, shouldn't we?
Well, I think there's 2 more, but yeah, go.
Well, we've spoken about a load of different songs and a load of different aspects of music, which is great, because I love that. And some people that come on love music more than others. You're right into your music, all sorts of different things. It's the 4th song. You'll need to tell me if there is a 5th. But the 4th one is Jan Tierson's Comptine Dan Autre Été. Is that right?
Mate, I don't speak a word of French, but that sounds good to me.
And is this from the film Amélie?
It is good knowledge.
Yeah, I thought it was. I was listening to it earlier on, and I thought I recognised this.
Yeah. I chose that because, I lived in Brighton for 15 years. Ali Back lives in Brighton, yeah?
Yes.
And I was walking through the centre one day and there was a guy dressed as a pigeon. And he had a whole pigeon's outfit on. And he was playing the piano. And he was playing that tune, Jan Tiersen.
Yeah.
And it just blew me away. And I went over to him. I said, "What is that?" And he told me what it is. And I just went away and learnt it. And I've been playing the piano now religiously every day or so for about 15 years.
So you must. So you've got a bit of a talent there.
It's an obsession. Like I said earlier, whether it's work or whether it's going out, it's like all or nothing. Yeah. So it is an obsession, and it just opened me up to lots of different music from like artists like Ludovico Einaudi, Oliver Arnolds. They're all classically trained, but they all do electronic now as well. So the crossover is amazing. And just when I want to go into a bliss-like state, I just get something like that on. And whenever I want to get away from anything, I just get on the piano and then I get in the flow. So,
is that one of your ways of kind of decompressing, of letting the pressures of work and everyday life kind of just wash over you? Take that time for you, almost like your kind of meditation, if you will.
It is, yeah. I think psychologists call it the flow, don't they? Where you forget about everything. And when I'm in that moment, I'm just at peace.
Yeah.
There's not a thing that bothers me.
But going back to your work as well, is a lot of this is kind of what you teach other people, but you're a great believer and kind of advocate of what you teach and applying it in your own life as well, right?
Yeah, I think, you've asked about game changers in the past, and I think in 2010, I went on a course in positive psychology.
Yeah.
And there was just so many life lessons that I learned on that course that it was just amazing. It was a total game changer.
Yeah.
And if you think about psychology, normally it's about studying what makes people dysfunctional. Positive psychology looks at what makes people tick. And it's just the foundation for good mental health. And it just looks at what gives you energy and what saps your energy. So for me, it was life-changing.
Yeah. So what makes you tick? What saps your energy, and what fills you with energy?
Well, the first thing you learn in positive psychology is how you condition yourself. So there's certain things that are going to influence your behavior.
Yeah.
So for example, the news. So if you watch the news every single day of your life and you roll around in dog shit, you're going to feel like shit. So the first thing it teaches you is how to manage that. I tune into the news once a week, and actually news headlines are really misleading anyway.
Yeah.
I think it was Bill Gates that said constant news. You're just seeing the headlines. You're not seeing any progress, and there's so much progress in the world. So the first thing it does, it looks at how you condition yourself via the media and social media.
Yeah.
And going back a decade, I come straight off Facebook because it wasn't influencing and it wasn't giving me good energy. I know you can use it for good, but for me, it did not put me in a good state. And if you look at why we have more depression and more suicides than at any other time in history, psychologists are saying it's down to constant news and social media. So it's looking at how you condition yourself, but your biggest source of your condition, and you'll know this, Pinky, it's, you say, just fucking do it. It's your inner voice inside your head. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So positive psychology looks at that. It looks at how you speak to yourself, whether you can or whether you can't.
Yeah.
But there's so many life lessons from it, mate. I'm so passionate about it because it looks at how you can reframe situations. A bit like when my mum said she's got a brain tumor. I reframed it quite quickly because it could have been a lot worse. So it gets you to look at situations differently to improve your outcomes. And one of the big lessons I think from it is just take ownership. Take ownership physically, mentally, spiritually. Doesn't matter what you do, you're responsible for it.
Yeah. And I think it's a very, very good point that you make there, and because that's easier said than done. And you're right. I'm a great advocate for it. It's very, very difficult for now. What was this statistic that many people in a survey were done, and you'll know this. In a poll of 100 people asked if they would rather be given electric shocks for 15 minutes or be put in a room just to sit in complete silence and be left with their thoughts. There was actually the majority of people said that they would rather have like little electric shocks rather than be left to what's in here.
Wow.
And I think that what you're saying there, it's easier said than done to take complete responsibility. And what I mean by that, because I'm going to lead this on to a question for you, is you can see it in the way in which people behave. It's one of the reasons that you've come off social media, the behavior and the attributes that people can put out, the kind of real bad energy that people can put out in terms of relationships with people, frustrations and anger being built up and kind of being thrown out over social media platforms. And I am a great believer in frustrations and anger being there, because it's easier to point the finger of blame at other people for the stuff that's going on in your own world than actually taking a really good look in the mirror, asking yourself some really difficult questions about what you can do differently. Like you said, how you can reframe situations, start looking at life and put yourself in other people's shoes for a little bit and stop playing that big victim card. And taking 100%, take ownership of your life. And people don't, because it's not easy. But I guess what my question there would be, for people that are dealing with frustrations, relationships, everybody has somebody in their life that just pushes their buttons. We all do. What would you say from a reframe perspective and a positive psychology perspective? What would you say to somebody that's maybe going through some real kind of personal challenges in their perception of how other people are behaving and why the other people should change?
Well, you can't control other people, can you? You can only control yourself. And if you look at positive psychology, studies have shown that if you're feeling low, it's really important that you remind yourself of the good stuff. We're hardwired to think negatively. 80% of our thoughts are negative because that kept us alive. And if we're surrounding ourselves by bad news every single day, whether it's social media or the news, you're going to be drawn to it and you're going to feel like crap. So there's a lot of things that you can do. Like I mentioned it earlier about being grateful and living in the moment. And studies have shown that people that remind themselves of all the good stuff every day, they feel much better. And if you think about it, you come out of a random vagina. Thank you. A random one, yeah?
Yeah, we did.
We were lucky to be born in the UK. And all of the things that we get, very few people will have food and be grateful for it. Very few people will think about their health and be grateful for it. So when you remind yourself of all those things every day, I can't wait to get up. Because just having a cup of tea and breakfast, I'm in the moment and I'm just enjoying it. So every single thing I experience, positive psychology has taught me just live in that moment and just be grateful. Because when you don't have it, when you don't have your health, when you don't have food, my father was starving as a child. He didn't get fed. And he always said that to me, that he didn't want his sons to go through that. So positive psychology looks at why you are the way you are and what can give you energy. And your mind, you can either put good things in there or bad things in there. And it gives you that control. And, you can blame your parents and environment up to a certain point, because 50% of why you are the way you are is down to your genes and the environment you were brought up in. 10% is down to your situation. And 40% is down to what you do, of how you condition yourself, how you think, how you behave, what you do physically, what you do mentally, what you do spiritually. All of these things you have control of. But at the moment, with modern society, we are living in a place where no one's in the moment and everyone's surrounding themselves with dog shit. Tim Peake said it, the astronaut. He said, you roll around in dog shit, you're going to feel like shit.
Yeah.
And, we recently had someone, in fact, I'll tell you a story about Arnold Schwarzenegger. He went to a university and everyone said to him, how are you so pumped? As in, you've set up a business, you become a Hollywood actor, you become a politician, you set up various businesses, A-list movie star. How did you do that? And he just turned around to every single person at the university and went, get your phone out. He went, look at your phone. How much time do you spend on your phone? And everyone was like 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 hours. He went, that's how I feel the way I do, and that's how I got successful. So that kind of tells you everything.
Because he didn't spend any time on his phone.
People were saying they didn't have enough time for it.
Yeah.
And not enough time to exercise, not enough time to set up a business.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Sorry, I'll go on a bit when I start on this. Sorry, mate. Sorry.
Listen, there's no time limit on this, other than you might, with your good living, might need to get to bed soon. But
this
I've
is
got
late for me, actually.
Is this late for you?
Wow, yeah. I'm normally in my pajamas now, reading a book.
Well, I've got a few more questions, and I've got one written down here, which is great to ask at this point when we're talking about positive psychology. What would you say is your most endearing quality?
Okay, well, I've got good and bad. We actually sat down as a group recently and said very candidly what we think our strengths and our weaknesses are, or areas of improvement. I was told that I had good empathy, but whether that's true, everyone at work seems to think I've got empathy and I can connect with everybody.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. What were your areas for development out of interest?
It was, what was my area of development? I think it was more just being more strategic and thinking about the goal a little bit more.
Picture, longer term.
Yeah, a bit longer term. Yeah. So.
See that there's a fine line though, isn't there, between being overly strategic. You can lose yourself in the future if you're not very careful. There's strategic and there's kind of not living, like you've said, not living in the moment.
You mentioned reframing, actually, Pinky, and a lot of people, when they get feedback, they take it as being criticized.
Yeah.
And that's a great example of reframing it, where you go, actually, it's an opportunity to get better. So some people could take it because they were reframing it. Some people were getting a little bit aggressive because they couldn't handle getting feedback.
Yeah. It's I did my first Wim Hof course workshop, ran my first workshop at the end of October, and the first thing that I did on the second follow-up email to everybody that I was there was I asked for a bit of a review, because that's how they measure success on the Wim Hof community, is through the reviews that you get. But the other question, so I asked for a review and what they thought was great, but the other thing that I asked, because I'll never learn if people don't tell me where I can improve. You have to, and it's and even like you said, even if somebody does tell you something that where they are, and 9 times out of 10 they're telling you something because they're trying to help you. You can always, like you say, you can always reframe it, you can always use it, and you can learn from it to help you grow. So what does success look like to you?
Success is just work-life balance and being happy. I view success totally how happy you are. Yeah. That's all it is to me. Everything that I do now is about what makes me happy.
What a great answer.
Yeah.
What a great answer. Are you happy?
Ecstatic.
Love it.
Yeah, I can't wait. Sometimes I wake up at like 3:30, 4:30 in the morning. I can't wait to get up. Seriously. Yeah. So, genuinely. So.
Brilliant. Listen, do you know what? Have you got another song, or were you kidding me?
Oh, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Have you got any quick fire questions?
Yeah, I do. I've got about half a dozen things about favourites for you. Quick fire favourites.
Right.
So,
Go for it.
your favourite animal,
Dog.
your favourite season,
I would say spring.
nice. Favourite colour,
Orange.
orange. Food,
I like a cheeky Nando's. That's always good. Or in
oh,
the winter, a nice toad in a hole.
nice. Okay, here's one for you, and you're not allowed. You're not. Well, actually, you can have what you want. My sister has a list of these that she does not like, that she detests. What's your
Right.
favourite word? Your favourite word?
Favorite word?
Yeah.
Hullabaloo.
Oh,
There you go.
that's a good word. This might be a daft questions, but favourite sport?
Yeah, I suppose I've got to go with football. I suppose,
Thought you might.
even though we're shit at it, but
And given some of the stories that we've heard tonight and some of the people that are watching, I think I know the answer to this because I think you've just put it in your mouth. Favourite drink?
or wine. I haven't drank lager really for 20 years. Really, yeah.
All right, a couple more. What was the last thing that really inspired you? Whether it was something you read, watched, listened to, conversation, whatever it was. Last thing that really inspired you.
The most successful guy that I know come up to me recently, give me a hug, and said, "I owe it all to you for training me." So that was quite inspirational.
That sounds like probably a really good place to kind of draw this to a halt. But I want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
It's a kind of JFDI one, isn't it, really? Tell me something about Alan Didlick that even your closest friends don't know.
Okay. I'm terrible at sexual intercourse.
Alan,
me and my wife have got to the point where now we go, "Have you had a shower?" And she'll go, "Yes." I go, "Have you had a shower?" We go, "Yes." "Have you brushed your teeth?" "Yes." "Have you brushed your teeth?" We go through a whole process. Then I'll fold my clothes. So by the time you get to it, the moment's gone, yeah.
Oh, Alan Didlick, this has been your JFDI podcast, and I've had an absolute blast. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being my psychologist.
Listen, it's been absolutely fantastic, and lots of comments. I'll let you go and read them all in your own time, because I know it's 9:25. You definitely need to get off to bed. Stay for just 5 minutes in the green room, and we'll have a quick chat with Pat. But for everybody that's tuned in, and there's been a few tonight, thank you very much indeed. I've had a great time. Thank you, Dids. Thank you all for watching. We may be back next week. I think we'll be back next week, and I think for those that are watching tonight, you might well know who is actually. You certainly know him. I'm going to give you a clue before I tell you who's on next week. I'll just say he's a good friend of Dids, and he's a good friend of Mr. Penn, who's in the green room tonight, and he's a good friend of Stu McCann. Now, all of these gentlemen have been on the podcast, so you work it out who might be on next week. Anyway,
okay.
Thanks for tuning in. Dids, any final words?
No, let's just good luck to everyone. I hope everyone's happy. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time, everyone. Good night.